Hey, everybody, and welcome, good afternoon, and welcome to Rewind, the show where we take a look back at the games industry's past as we build the games industry's future. My name is Chris Melissinos, and I'm the Principal Evangelist for the video games industry at AWS, and your host of Rewind, coming to you live every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And make sure you hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons on Twitch and YouTube so you know when we go live, and it really helps the channel out. So my guest on today's episode of Rewind is Matthew Nimmo, a lifelong gamer, developer, and architect. At the young age of 5, he started his gaming passion through his first game, Mega Man on NES. Yeah, right? Yeah, Mega Man on NES. At each step in his career, he used gaming as a vehicle to stay on top of technological changes by experimentation and prototyping new technologies as they came out. In 2016, Matthew established his own gaming studio, in which he has designed, developed, and published 3 games to date. And before joining AWS, he served as a CA for Stifel Financial for nearly 9 years. And today he's able to pour his passion for gaming into serving AWS's game customers. And of course, the technology and pipeline he's developed for his current classic retro game development efforts, of course, runs on AWS. So thank you so much, Matthew, for being on the program. Matthew, wait, where's Matthew? I think we need to get him in here. Hey, there he is. All right, a big cheer and some applause for Matthew for joining the stream today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Chris, for inviting me today.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about your background, to talk about the work that you've done in not only at AWS, but in game development. But I want to know a little bit more about you before we jump into all of those bits. So, you know, I mentioned that your first game was Mega Man on the NES. That's the one that kind of sticks out in your head. Like, was that the first system you owned? What's the first game console you really remember using when you were a kid?
It was definitely the NES, and I remember it was a specific scene in Mega Man 2. It was like the Bomberman stage, and like I was so obsessed with it. I even, you know, in kindergarten, I'd mimic, you know, that scene. I'd go around with these, you know, plastic bowling balls that would mimic bombs, and I would throw them around and all that. I just loved the game. There was just something that really just got into my blood with it. And so it was the NES that started it all.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, iconic classic system, right? It has been the entry point for so many people playing video games today, right? Those
right.
are just a little bit more gray. You know, we go all the way back to original Pong and things like that. But the NES, of course, near and dear to my heart, and of course, built some of the most everlasting game franchises in the world, right? Started on the NES. So that's pretty fantastic. Now, you're still clearly you're still a big retro gamer, but what are kind of some of the systems or retro games that you really enjoyed today?
I'd say probably the SEGA 32X are my favorite. I'm definitely not biased with any of the retro systems, to be truthful, but there was just something about the Sega Genesis that caught my eye back in the early 90s. And I was at like an elementary school or junior high event. It was like a science fair. And in that science fair, they had this booth with the Sega Genesis in it. And I was like, what is this black magic? This is amazing. So I was like, you know, I was playing Sonic, and it's like, this is so different. I've got to get one of these when I get older, hopefully, maybe for Christmas. So
a Sega Genesis at a science fair. Do you remember what the science fair project was?
No, I really don't. I think it was probably around the concept like advancing technology and trying to establish like some sort of connectivity to the technology of that time and the youth, and really get them excited about, you know, things that are coming up. So I think that's how it came about.
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, I mean, what a great way to go and introduce computer technology and connectivity and interactivity into the home. In fact, if you go and look back at the comments that Ralph Baer, right, the father of video games, of home video games, you look back at one of the comments he made, he said something to the effect of, if people tell you that computer adoption didn't happen because of video games in the home. They must have recently come here from another planet, right? So basically, video games are the first computers that we had, and it acclimated an entire society globally to the fun, engagement, and interactivity that computers in the home can provide. And what a wonderful way to do that through gameplay, right? And get people used to bringing computers into the house as part of their regular daily diet of consumption of content and experiences.
Yeah, it's like this beautiful orchestration of all the different media types. You know, you get the imagination of like, how did they make that pixel move? How did they make it do that? And then the art behind it, the music, it's just beautiful. And be able to marry that all together in this this fun media that we get to consume.
Yeah, no, last week on Rewind, we interviewed folks over at 8-Bit Workshop, and it's the very same thing. You know, they're providing a web-based IDE to let people go ahead and start programming on older systems, right? 6502-based systems, Atari VCS, ColecoVision, NES, these sorts of things, all through a web-based IDE. But the coolest part about this, and you probably had the same experience growing up, is when you get access to the code and you start figuring out how to change pieces of the code to see what it does. And you start learning organically how games are made, how they're programmed, right? That's where so many of us that grew up with the first computer games at home, first video games at home, learned how to program, learned how to go ahead and make the things we wanted to play.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Awesome. All right. So before we jump into, and I also popped up the URL for your studio, which is Frankenware Studios. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. Yeah, I know you said that you still need to update the site. That's okay. Now we're going to give you the impetus to go ahead and do that by popping that up here. But I'd love for you to share with our audience some of the work you do on a daily basis here at AWS in service of game developers and our game customers. Yeah,
for sure. So I think I want to step back a little bit of like how I got involved with AWS and what actually got me to AWS Game Tech, if you don't mind. So, being that I had that passion, as you mentioned, ever since a young age, and really just been able to fan those flames over the years in my own studio and so forth in 2016. And I had a lovely time at Steeple and a lot of lovely people there. But one day, I happened to come across this posting with AWS and Games Tech, and I was very familiar and comfortable with AWS as a customer for the past 4 years at Steeple. It's been great to us, and I just really love that relationship. So it's like, I've got to take a chance. So I did, and I'm glad I did, because now I get the opportunity to serve with AWS and serve the customers that, like myself, as I was a customer. I get to be with these gaming customers and helping them go through all these different challenges. And it's not so much about AWS Tech, which I'm a big fan of. It's about helping them solve their problems and just resting assured that we have the cool tech to do it. Right. I know we can do it, and be able to help them figure out what it is that they're trying to achieve, and also, talking turkey with them on their games and just really enjoying that, just eating that up. I get to do that on a daily basis and help, customers solve their problems.
I love that. I love that. That mirrors somewhat my trajectory into the games industry, officially getting to work with people I admire and respect, and get a little bit of fan frozen when you're meeting with some of the partners at the beginning, because you care so much about video games, you care so much about the medium, and we want to use the technologies, services, and expertise we have just to help them make better games. Help them get the technology out of the way so they can focus on better experiences, more content, more meaningful connections, right? And I think that at the end of the day, it's also taking care of the people who choose to spend time playing those games. So when players are connecting to the infrastructure that we are operating and helping to run for these big games, they do so reliably, it's performant, it's low latency, it's secure, and that's consistent. And that's what we do at AWS, right? So we enable more art, more meaningful connection, get out of the world, and more people to play together. And I think that's a lovely thing to do. Yep. Yes, is everybody in agreement? Yes? Yes, you are. How about you? All right, everybody is in agreement there, right? And I should also mention, if you're interested to know a bit about what we do here at AWS and how you can also get started, of course, you can make your way over to our web properties here and see all the different partners that we work with, the different solutions that are available. And we try to make that as easy as possible for you to discover how to utilize AWS technologies in your cloud game development journey, right? So, all right, that's enough of what we do on the daily here, Matthew, at AWS. I want to talk about the 32X. I want to talk about why you decided to choose the 32X as the system that you were going to go ahead and develop for. And maybe we do is take a minute here and share with people what the 32X is. So can you give us your top level description of the 32X?
Oh boy. Okay. Top level description of the 32X. So first off, it's a forgotten system. I think there's just so much potential behind it. And it was actually, in my opinion, I think there's others that would disagree. It was a brilliant move with SEGA US, in which how can they extend the life of a system that a lot of families already had today? How can they take it up a notch, in the technology, go to 32-bit, gaming and all that processing power? Well, here's just this nice little add-on. We put it on top of the Sega Genesis, and now you've had this new environment to play all these games, in which now they're starting to get into that 3D world with like Star Wars, with some of that arcade shooter, and some new titles that haven't hit arcades that are in the 3D world are starting to see that come to the home gaming consoles. So with the 32X forgotten, I think there's 36 US titles that were launched. So I felt a little bad for it, to be honest with you. And also there's a lot of nostalgia there with me getting it one Christmas. It's like, I want to write something for it. And that's how I kind of get started.
That's awesome. And I loved the 32X as well. Of course, being a big old game nerd, I love all of it, right? And so, I couldn't help myself when it came to wanting to explore the depths of the 32X when it first came out, and deciding, do I sell all my stuff and go for this new fancy 3DO system that's coming out that's a whole lot more expensive? And what do I do? I shared this with Matthew before we started the episode today. I loved it so much that I actually built a Sega Neptune at home, which was the forgotten system that was never made by Sega. This was going to be halfway between the Genesis and the mighty Sega Saturn, right, when it launched. And what it was supposed to be is a 32X and a Genesis all in one case. And so it didn't exist. And so I followed some instructions with somebody who had done this before online, and I made a Sega Neptune. So if you look inside the cartridge slot, you can actually see the ribbon cables in there. Amazing. And some of the additional power bridging that I did. This thing will run 32X and Genesis games straight out of the box. And when I showed this to a friend of mine who worked on the 32X at Sega, I directed him over to a video, and he said, first of all, that's amazing that it works. And secondly, why did you waste your time building that? And I said, because you didn't do it, so it needed to be done.
That's right.
That's right. Die Hard 32X, right? Isn't that right? That's right. Little applause for that. Yes. Us Die Hard players, right? Okay. So that's the 32X. It was that forgotten system. It was an add-on. It was a bridge between the capabilities of the Genesis and what was to come later, which was the Sega Saturn. So why don't we go ahead and actually take a look at a little clip of the 32X launch. So I'm going to move us back to the other scene. And let's go ahead and take a look at the 32X launch commercial.
Since the beginning of time, mankind has striven to double and redouble.
And I know, Matthew, you and I can't hear the audio, but our audience can.
That's good.
All right. And I'm checking the chat over here.
I actually remember this commercial.
Yeah. Oh, and there's the Star Wars game, right?
Yep,
So good. And there we are, the mighty SEGA 32X. Actually, let's see if there's any more in the clip there. Yeah, we'll just keep this up as we kind of talk about it. So the 32X was that stopgap piece, right? And this is a time when SEGA had gone out and they created, they had a bunch of systems in market at the same time. The Nomad, the Pico, the Genesis. They were still supporting the Sega Master System down in South America. They had the Game Gear in the market. They had the Sega CD. They had the Genesis Activator. They had the Mercenary. They had all of these peripherals. And unfortunately, with the 32X, where it kind of got lost in history, is that being that stopgap, people are like, well, you know what? I'm not buying any more add-ons for my Genesis, even though this thing is basically the same architecture as the Saturn. I'm going to wait for the next one to come out. And so there was too much product, too many systems in the market for Sega to support all at once. And that's why the 32X had a short but beloved life by those of us that think it's pretty awesome, right?
That's right.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so 32X, forgotten system. You love it. I love it. You decide you want to go ahead and start developing for the 32X and creating a game. Why don't you tell us about the 3 games that you did prior to your 32X development?
Oh, you know.
Oh, we lost Matthew there. This is what happens when we're running a live show.
We're dipping back a little bit there. So
There we go. We lost you there for a moment. We had a nice frozen picture. We got you back now. Oh,
okay, good.
There you go. All right, let's go. Let's go.
As you mentioned earlier in the introduction, is that whenever I'd start off learning some new technology, I would start by like writing a game for it because that really got my interest. And in doing so, one of the first companies I worked for was Duck Creek Technologies. It was a company that created an insurance, software insurance. And during that time, I was really interested in what was going on as far as like MSN Messenger. And I don't know why. I think we used it a lot at work, but the thing is, I was always fascinated with the games that you could do in MSN Messenger at the time. So what I did was like, okay, in my nights and evenings, I'm going to construct this desktop warrior was the game. Always enjoyed RPGs and building up some sort of character. And what it ended up being this little desktop warrior that was like a tool icon on your PC, and it would just run in the background, and it would constantly fight these monsters. But not visually unless you wanted to pop up the window and see what was going on. So in the background, it'd be, fighting against these monsters and whatnot. But then what the interesting thing was, you can actually take that same character that you're building and you can actually launch it in MSN Messenger and fight it with your other buddies. So he or she would have their own, monster that they were, or their own desktop warrior that they were battling or building up to battle. So then you can interact on MSN Messenger and battle each other. So that was my first game. And I think that was more of like just free download, enjoy. I think it was on download.com for a long while. And then after that, I created this. It was a MMO, but it's not massive. It was like miniature multiplayer experience. And I did it in college on using VB6. Yeah. And it was like, it was a 2D, sprites on a screen, and you're going through this world at many different levels through the world. There's almost like a Zelda-like feel to it. But a lot of my college friends would get together on the game server, and I can hear them, fighting each other and fighting monsters as I'm walking down the hallway, playing my game that I created. I think I maybe only sold like a couple copies of that, but I didn't care. It was just the joy of creating. And at the time, I didn't know any better, but I just knew how to program in VB6, so that's what I did.
Oh my goodness! Somebody in the chat said, "Wait, did Matthew kick off the idle games craze?" Perhaps.
Maybe. Maybe. And the last game, this one was, this was a doozy. It took me 12 years to actually get this one written and completed. It was. I'm a martial artist, so I took my inspiration with martial arts, and especially with Japanese culture, and I wanted to write something on a mobile device. Mm-hmm. So in that time, I was like, how can I take like an RPG feel And like my love for like katana swords and like swordsmiths and all that, and put it into a game. Well, over time, I actually started interviewing a apprentice Japanese swordsmith, like, how do you do this? What's the whole process? What's the authentic process of how to make this happen? And over the years, he kind of gave me the information. And I took that information and I started writing this game 4 different times until finally I landed on Unity. And with Unity, I finally fleshed out my game, and it's still available on Android. On iOS, I had it on iOS for a while, but I had some difficulties there, so I'm going to put that back up there eventually. But I launched that in 2020. People can still download it and enjoy it, but you're a Japanese swordsmith, and you're going through and you're creating these Japanese swords, which you can trade, you can use, you can just have because you can. And it's the whole process of like forging out on the phone with taps and different rhythms and heat and cold and all that's being considered when you're creating your swords.
Very, very cool. Very cool. All right, so Unity and published, these are the games which you can go ahead and check out as well, and we'll pop up a link to those in the description of the videos after these go live, after we're done talking, so that way we can continue here. So now let's talk about 32X development. What I'm playing right now here, I was able to go ahead and find the right video. This is a demonstration reel of what the 32X is actually capable of. It was certainly a whole lot more capable than developers thought it was back at the time. So tell me about your road into 32X development. How did you start that here for the project we're going to go ahead and jump into and take a look at?
Yes, so I believe it was like 2021, I was like, hey, does this exist? Can people start creating modern games for retro systems? And man, my mind was blown. I was like, oh wow, this is a thing. And I happened to find the Sega Genesis Development Kit community, or SGDK or something like that. And they actually got me started. It's like, yeah, you can develop for the Sega Genesis, but there are a few out there that have started looking down the path of 32X. And actually, I'm going to give a big shout out to 2 of the people that helped me in this journey. Joseph Fenton, who's known as Chili, and then Victor Lucius, who's known as Vic. Without their help, I could not actually do any of the development of 32X because it's such a small audience, such a niche within within a small community of developers to begin with, and not a lot of people were doing it. So of course, because of my nature and who I am, I like to find that niche development community and see if I actually do something with it. So I started kind of playing with the toolkit that Chili had put together, and then I started communicating with Vic on like some of the works he did with it. And they actually took the Doom game that you see on 32X today, and they gave it a huge facelift. And I mean, it's kind of Doom Resurrection. Yeah. So that coding is amazing, and they are just wizards. I mean, like assembly and C wizards. And I just feel not worthy being in the same room with those guys. But thankfully, they were extremely patient and walked me through how to go through the challenges of developing for the 32X. And I just got hooked. And this was like the system I knew I wanted to build like an RPG for, because they're really, I guess some would say like Blackthorn is an RPG. Yeah. But there truly really wasn't that like RPG-ish,
Yeah, and it's Blackthorn's really an action RPG, right? I mean, you have a lot of side-scrolling, shooting action stuff, but with systems that you can use to build it, but not what we typically think of when we talk about RPGs, right? Right, the Final Fantasies, the Phantasy Stars, right? Those sorts of games. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into your game in just a moment here. But before we do, why don't you also talk a bit about your development pipeline? So you said that you've been building you've been prototyping on these technologies, and you've been building out a game starter kit. Tell me, what does it entail, and why did you stand this up, on AWS here?
Yeah, so this is a mixture in like 2 different projects here. So The first project was I took the Sega Genesis development kit, and I wanted to see, can I actually have AWS build that? Can I actually create a pipeline in AWS, and as I'm here locally, write some code, push that code to my repository, and trigger a whole CI/CD process, and ultimately build the ROM that you would use on emulation, or be able to put it onto real hardware, and have that actually deposit itself into an S3 bucket. And the world's your oyster at that point. Once you have it in a nice repository like that, you can trigger all sorts of different events. Because I got thinking to myself, like, why would you want to do this? Because a lot of the developers out there, they just develop locally and they're happy with that. But if you're trying to level up that game and that reach of, like, I've got this game.
Hold on, did you just say level up that reach?
I did.
Oh, that's very good.
Level up that reach of, like, your game into more people's hands, such as maybe publishers, or maybe you want to automatically have your new build in different languages, or you just fill in the blank, right? AWS gave me that avenue to do that. So in that particular case, in that small project, I was able to, like, kick off different translations and then have my game in the small coded sample, have it translated in French and Spanish and all that with just a click of a button. So that was kind of neat. But what inspired me to do this starter kit, and this starter kit I've not put on AWS yet, but it's the kit that's possible to be put on AWS or even done locally. So with all this effort I did with the 32X, I didn't want everyone else to have to go through that same pain. So it's like, I'm going to put together this game starter kit, and I want to be able to make it free for anyone that's interested, put it out there, and it's got a lot of demo art, demo audio, demo sound effects, and it's a great way to get started. It uses some of the tooling out there that's like tiled for your map creation, so you can use tiled to interject your maps in there. And that's a big shout out to Victor. He was the one that made that possible in the 32X. So I was able to kind of combine that into there. So with the starter kit itself, you'll be able to launch the game, and you'll be able to download the code, compile the game, and launch it. And what it is, it actually is this RPG format in which you've got your 2D sprites running around on this map that you created and tiled, and you get these battle scenes, you get this music, you got the ability to move around and so forth, and you get just the natural code sections in there where you can expand upon. You can add inventory systems, quest lines, etc.
That's awesome.
And so that is left at the creativity for anyone that will download this in the future.
That's fantastic. That is really, really fantastic. And what, again, a way to help jumpstart people that want to go and experiment with this, learn how to go ahead and develop for these older, beloved, systems that still have a really significant audience and want to see new content being created. I think that's really just absolutely wonderful. And we should also mention that if you want to follow along with your journey, you actually have your 32X game in development journey here at spritesmind.net. So people can go ahead and check out your development journey there. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit. Oh, actually, that's not going to work because of the way OBS handles Windows. So, but you have this very detailed journey that you've laid out there for everybody to go ahead and see kind of how you develop this stuff. So you want more information, we'll go ahead and make sure that we pop the URL into the description of the video after we finish our recording for today. But that's at spritesmind.net. And just if you want to go there now, you can go and look for, well, don't go now. We still have a lot more to talk about, but new 32X game in development. So make sure you go ahead and check that out over there. All right. So longtime game development guy, working here at AWS, helping game development customers and publishers go ahead and utilize AWS, building this really awesome pipeline for people that want to go and experiment in 32X development. Why don't we go ahead and check out your game that's in development? So this will be the first time anybody outside of the two of us are seeing it, I think. So I'm going to kill this music. I'm going to go ahead and shut off that browser, and I'm going to go ahead and get us reset and started off here with your game. So maybe you can walk us through. Oh, I love that chili right there on the title screen there. I'm also going to make sure that I'm checking out the chat. So if you have any questions for Matthew about his development journey, about 32X development, make sure you go and pop them into the chat, both on Twitch and YouTube. And in the meantime, Matthew, why don't you walk me through what we're about to experience here?
Oh yeah, so Mud. I actually came up with this title many years ago, and there's multiple meanings behind it. The first meaning is, I don't know how many out there remember the good old muds of the day. You know, like I was a big mudder. Like it's like your MMOs without the graphics. So you had to go out there and kind of read and kind of see what was going on, and actually, use a lot of your imaginations to kind of fill in the gaps. And so there's that part of the meaning, but then there's also like, part of one of the races, I guess, that's in this RPG comes from the mud. And I'm not going to go too much into it because that will eventually spoil the storyline in the future. But there's part of the background of the story that, that gives birth to this title as well. And I think that's the big part of the mud title itself. But the game itself, going back to Game Starter Kit, it's all built upon that. So I built the Game Starter Kit and then started building this game.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when this releases, when this goes up to GitHub, viewers who will be able to go ahead and download it, be able to start building on that pipeline and start creating their own games for the 32X, right? So you're doing a really good job of removing a lot of the barriers to entry out of the way for people just to get started and experiment. And that's super commendable. Isn't that right, everybody? Yes, it is. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump in right now. I'm going to go and press start here on my controller. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So we all thought. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so maybe explain a little bit about the different systems that you have at play here for the scene that we're looking at.
Sure. So I don't have a lot of systems at play yet, but what we're seeing here is the background map in which your 2D sprites are adventuring in the world, right? And this is a town view. And what we have up front is the dialogue screen. So in the top right corner, you see your character, your hero, and his portrait. And you're going to see a lot of like Shining Force vibes because that was one of my beloved games I had, as a child. And some of the artwork here I am still working on. Some of it is still plugged in as demo art. And so I do apologize for that. Other aspects of it I have created myself, but I'm constantly going through and massaging it, making sure I get the right look and feel. But the vibe is like that Shining Force, color palette, that lightheartedness, but also the rich functionality. So this is like more like the dialogue interaction with the game right now. So.
All right, so let's go ahead and make our way through it. So when you were looking at doing development on the 32X versus something like a bog standard, Genesis, what are the advantages that you're taking advantage of? That's great alliteration. In the demo that we're looking at now, like why not the Genesis versus the 32X?
Yeah, and a lot of this actually could be done on the Genesis. The one exception will come up whenever we get to some battling, and hopefully you remember the Konami cheat code to be able to get there. But
yes, let's see if I can actually do that, right? Oh, okay, all
That's
right.
right.
Talked a little bit there.
Because this is a demo, so like there's a lot of the story that we would have to go flesh out and go through the story before you actually be able to do some battling. But I enabled a nice little cheat code for Chris to be able to kind of move forward in the gameplay in this demo today, which is kind of fun.
All right, yeah.
But in the battling system, I'm actually using the scaling effect of the images. So you'll see it with the projectiles in the battle system. So in which one of the characters is throwing a robotic carrot at you, this metal carrot bomb, and it's zooming in at you as it's being thrown, because you're on two different planes. Very much like the Shining Force series, in which your enemy was in the back and you're more in the foreground, and there's the battling's happening. So Yeah, you're kind of going through the storyline right now, and I think you've already passed like the first main part of the storyline, in which that was all scripted.
Yep.
That was all scripted. So, Chris, you weren't actually pushing any buttons there until just recently.
Yep. Now, so you're using a tile-based system for the background. Do the characters actually move in the same tile-based coordinates, or it feels like they have actually a bit more freedom, right, than just being locked into just the individual tiles?
They do. So even with the game starter kit, I built in this basic AI functionality. So the NPCs that are running around, I have two different modes. One is like they have no AI at all, which that particular NPC doesn't. He has no AI except for just standing there looking pretty. The others will wander around. And so the reason why I put that in there, I wanted to demonstrate that even with the game starter kit, you can interject NPC AI in there. Now, he hasn't moved that much right now, but he would over time. But what's also interesting, this AI also obeys the collision laws that I have put in place. So there's collision that's going on here too. So as you notice that you can't just naturally walk on top of that house. You can't naturally walk in different areas. My collision isn't quite right because I'm still working out some of the kinks, but that's because of me misplacing collision tiles and tiled, versus the engine itself. The engine is handling the collision correctly, so that's nice.
Very cool.
So yeah.
Which, by the way, when I got to this dialogue, the first thing I thought of was Shenmue, right? Have you seen any sailors? Do you know where sailors are? Do you know where the sailors hang out? And I was like, oh no, chickens are the sailors in mud.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny. I didn't think about that before. Yeah. So
that's just more useless knowledge, man. Just rattling around inside of the skull, right?
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. You should, I got all sorts of useless knowledge in my head, but yeah, this story is like, you guys have already been reading some of it, but you're this player, he's getting ready to graduate, and he's feeling like, oh man, should I even be graduating? I can't even get my fallen, what is this fallen thing, right? And then you'll learn more about it as you explore the world, but now he's getting ready to go and head to graduation. But Chris is exploring, seeing all my wonderful hard work of tile mapping.
Which is also not an easy thing to do. It's not just as simple as slapping down different tiles. It's actually trying to create a cohesive, coherent, logical layout to these environments. So people are taking cues from the way things are laid out to understand how to traverse them later, and things should be aligned properly, right?
That's it. Yeah, I drew this all out on paper first, and then I went to tile and started kind of actually drawing all it in where I wanted things to go and so forth.
Yep. So do you really think that hunk of junk is going to protect our town? We need to do a table read of the script, right? That's what we need to go ahead and do. For sure. So let's see. Do we think that hunk of junk is going to protect the town? We don't know. Right? We don't know yet. So let's go over and talk to this young lad, I presume. Good day to you. Best hurry up for graduation. Yes, we best hurry up for graduation. I see we have the church or steeple in the town, of course. Somebody in chat said, are there any built-in AI pathing algorithms like A or something like that?
There's the ability to do that. I have not actually put that in there yet. What I have, like the very beginning part of the scene, when Chris started the game, right? That was all scripted. So you had the ability to go in and create these scripts and basically just, have Chris advance by hitting the C button, and your character or whatever NPC that you wrote in that script to say, go to that place, you go there, right? So that's in place. But as far as like AI driven paths, not yet, but the potential is there. So.
Very cool. I want to make sure we go back and redo this dialogue because it gave us a clue, and I love the way you put this in here. So speaking to this chap here. Oh, and they said, awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Yes. Use the Konami code to get past him. Oh, he has a soft spot for Contra. And don't worry about your Fallen. I'll put him in safe mode, and that should allow you to adventure some. What? You didn't know about graduation? Didn't know this is just a demo? So I appreciate all of that. All of that. Now, I assume in the demo right now, like the buildings are not active, like going into the structures or anything, right?
That's right. That's right. And up here, this would be a triggering event that,
so what would be?
Whenever you walk up to Joseph there,
okay.
The minute you start walking up, he'd be racing down to you because a certain event would occur, if it wasn't the demo. So just a little teaser for things to come.
And so now, do you trigger that base? So you basically could have put a flag in the environment that triggers that behavior, right? And then I assume, pathfinding then also, if the character is moving around the screen, then your pathfinding algorithm will let them most effectively stop what they're doing and get to you, correct?
That's exactly it. So like in Tiled, I have got this collision layer that I did extend, Victor's work, and he's going to, I think at some point, put his own collision detection in there, but I put it in there myself. So I get this collision layer, and in there I got different types of collisions. So once you hit certain parts of the map, it will tell me, is this a blocking collision? Is this event? Is this like a warp, which you're going to experience in a minute? You're going to warp to another map. Or is it, fill in the blank. I've got different collision types in there.
All right, let's see if I have my controller mapped correctly to do this. Let's see, my side, my legs have quit working. I can no longer move. Who's my creator? Mr. Joseph, of course. Yes, Mr. Joseph. Figures. But if you have the password, all right, so now I need to do that again and get over to the password section there. And let me do up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. Oh, nope, see, it didn't do it. Let me see. Let me try it again.
Okay.
It is up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. There we go. Yay! Look at that. Yay, we did it. The Konami code successfully entered. And now we've warped to another island. So tell me, is this part of the overall map, or are you completely switching out the map and then this new area comes in? So how do you have that kind of...
That's a great question. So what I'm doing is when you're warping to a new map in the code, I'm only having one map rendered at a time, based upon, Victor's work in there. So, which is nice, but so I'm not having multiple maps in memory at one time. So that way, if you go walk back in town, it's going to take this guy out of memory, and it's going to put the town map, Capernaum, back in memory. And you'll be able to kind of walk through Capernaum again.
Very good. All right, here we are now in the random fight sequence. And you already warned me that this is real time, not turn-based. So maybe talk a bit about what, which by the way, I enjoyed. I liked that fact that I didn't have to wait. And I'll tell you why. So one of my favorite RPGs is Grandia 2. And what I love about the battle system for it is that it's got a meter that builds. And so what you can do is you can kind of push back on enemies to drop their basically fight meter down while yours is building up. So you can get into this rhythm of strategy where you're getting multiple hits in on the turn. So it's a half step between turn-based and real-time. This, though, being able to just go ahead and fire in real-time, I appreciate it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing? Let me go ahead and get into another fight. There we go. So tell me what it is. What are the systems that we're seeing that generate this scene?
Sure. So, well, first off, the battle scene itself, the battle system, is definitely not fleshed out all the way. You get the bare bones minimum right here, because you can actually hold the guard button up the entire time and you'll never take a hit. But the thing is, you never shooting at them either. So you kind of have to figure out, like, okay, is it safe to shoot them yet, or is it not so safe to shoot them, and so forth. So in that battle scene, what I have going on is obviously in the world map itself, you're wandering around, and in the world map, I have designated that in certain maps have mobs that can come out. And so program that in there. In this particular map, you have the Rust Bunny, not the Dust Bunny, but the Rust Bunny that will come out and seek his revenge on you. And he is, he loads up here. And this is one of the many scenes that would be in the game itself. And it's that that real-time combat. You have to defend, you have to shoot, you have to time things. You don't really know when he's going to fire at you. He too will also defend. And of course, as you're taking damage, like if you take some damage in a little bit here, your character will start to fatigue a little bit. And I'm trying to make this a really enriched battle experience. So you start to see battle damage. And at some point when I have items on there, like your character will have different items, and those items will fall off, will explode because you're like this robotic, organic cyborg type thing. And then, of course, you're fighting a lot of very similar robotic, mobs, and there'll be a lot of fire, a lot of electric shocks, and just a lot of those animations that occur as the battle progresses. And there'll be different meters in here. Right now, I just had a simple HP, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 10. But these meters will tell you, you know what, you can only defend for so long, you can only attack for so long. So you have to kind of balance that out. You have to figure out that, I can only defend for so much longer. And of course, when you're not defending, that meter will charge back up and so forth. So it's going to be this wonderful dance as you progress in battle throughout the game.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I can see the animation, right, of Victor. Once he took enough damage, he's kind of slumped over a little bit, a shield behind him, right? So really good visual cues. Now, I'm also assuming that in this type of an environment, would it be possible to mix a 3D asset or 3D mesh into the 2D gameplay field? So if you decided that you wanted these to be represented by three-dimensional objects versus sprite-based characters, is that possible in your toolkit?
It's not in my toolkit. That's because I haven't figured out how to do that yet, to be honest with you. But with the 32X itself, yes, it is possible. And another shout back to Chili, Joseph Hinton. He created the tool chain that made it possible to make this game. So in there, when you're looking at Doom, you have that, well, I don't know if it's technically 3D or not, but with the 32X, you're capable of doing 3D, but I don't have it in my game starter kit.
Okay, yeah. But you know what? Working in open source, working in the community, right? This is where if you want to go and take a look at the work that Matthew is doing and want to be able to contribute, reach out, check out the logs he already has on spritesmind.net. Spritesmind.net, excuse me. Again, we'll make sure that link is in the description there as well. And to your point, right, it's the help of others that allowed you to get this far. So, that's what I love about the retro gaming community is we all want to see this stuff make its way out into the world. And so people are willing to give their time, effort, experience, right, to making all of these things better. So that's pretty cool. All right, so this is the little oh yeah, let me clear this Rust Bunny out. This Rust Bunny is I was going to say, yes, you have an aggressive random encounter routine going, which is great.
Yes, I do.
Now, are these are the other objects like the hole there? That one is not leading anywhere right now. That's just a placeholder of art. Is that correct?
That's correct. I wish I was adventurous with my demo. I was trying to think about what else can I do, and I just ran out of time. So
yeah. Oh no, hey, no, that's awesome. It's a demo. This is early work. We're seeing the first parts of your work, which is pretty awesome, right? It's pretty awesome to see this come together. The fact that you're able to build this out of a tool pipeline that you're developing, even better, right? Even better. Now, I'm assuming that, so yeah, there we go. There's the collision that brought me back into town. And that right now, I know the dialogue hasn't changed yet. Like if I come up to him, is he actually still?
He's a speech. That's on purpose.
Yeah, see, that's great. That's great. So if I come in, let me see. Let me run away and warped back over. Pretty cool. Really, really cool. Great job, man. Great job.
Thank you.
So, all right. So let's talk a bit about maybe share with us, and I'm just going to walk around here as we talk through this.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Share with us, what are some things that you didn't expect that turned out to be really, really neat? And what are some things you didn't expect that turned out to be really, really difficult, like on the 32X? Like, was there anything that kind of was a pleasant surprise and something that was maybe a bit of a curveball?
So there were so many curveballs, but that's part of because I was new to it. And in fact, at one point, Victor, he had patience of a saint with me because there's times like he would be like, "Do you know what you're doing?" I'm like, "Nope, I do not." That's why I'm here. I'm asking the questions. And, we made it through it. But one of those challenges I was dealing with was getting actually the images and the sprites to render correctly. Oh, I fought that so hard. And what's interesting is that I finally landed on all the images that you see in the Game Starter Kit and here, all bitmaps. Okay, it's one of the easiest images to deal with, and it's nothing that's really kind of compressed, nothing you have to really decompress or do any finagling with. So when you get the Game Starter Kit, if you know how to open up and edit a bitmap and like a sprite or something like that, you can change this world however you want to do it. So I learned that the bitmap, whenever it gets pulled into memory in the 32X, it actually has it mirrored. So I had to figure out how to get the images not mirrored, and a lot of that work was actually based upon what the feedback I got from Vic. So thankfully, I was able to get through that. And Chili, man, he walked me through a lot of the stuff. Like, okay, this is how you get the palette information off of the bitmap, and this is how you do this in sound, and this is how you do this in music. And so that was a big challenge. Also, another thing that was kind of challenging, and I'm going through this right now, is that like music with the FM synthesizer, you can't really adjust the volume. You can't, from what I found out. I didn't know that. So I think I have to go I'm using a chip tuner known as Furnace, and I'm going in and I'm starting to learn how to create these songs, these music, songs that you're hearing in the game. But I'm using a chip tuner to do that, but I have to go in and basically lower all the notes down, and I'm still learning how to achieve that today. So that's a fun challenge.
That is a wonky thing to have to deal with, right? Just the fact that there's no direct volume control. You have to actually do that in the composition. That's pretty interesting, right? From a development perspective. So, all right. And so what are your, I'm sorry, go ahead, please continue.
Oh, yeah. So one of the big surprises I had with this was there was a big chunk of work that allowed for like tiled maps to come into the 32X. And before I knew that existed, I was thinking, how am I going to achieve this? But that's when I kind of reached out. One of the many times I reached out to Vic, I was like, hey, I'm going to plug this in here. Do you mind? And can you help me work through that? Because he had created this wonderful demo in which he had this tile map and you're able to kind of like go through the entire map. I was like, that's exactly what I need to do in here. So I was pleasantly surprised to find that that's something I didn't have to write from scratch.
That's fantastic. Excellent. All right. So tell us, what are the next steps in Mud? What are the next things, the 2 or 3 things you're going to be focusing on as you continue to build out your game here?
Okay. Well, one of the things that's going to drive me crazy if I don't get this going ASAP is to finish this first quest line out. I want to be able to get this completely fleshed out. So like as you're walking up right now, it's going to trigger up that event. Joseph's going to run down and the whole scene is going to continue to unfold that particular storyline. I want to get that fleshed out and just kind of see what does a full script of that storyline or main quest line look like. Because from there, then I can pivot and find out how I can make that repeatable for like when you go to different towns and what's that script going to look like. So instead of having this script and this, it's monolithic script in the code, I can split it out and make it a little bit more manageable. The other thing I'm going to do is, I haven't mentioned this yet, is that the way I've designed the Game Starter Kit was majority of the work is in a gameworld.h file. Okay.
Okay.
So now you can go in there and make tweaks to all the code all you want, but like if you got your assets already created and you want to add a new asset to the world, you go in there and you tweak the game world.h file. But that's still in C. It's still, so I actually in the process of creating this game editor. So it's a graphical game editor, very low fidelity because I'm still learning all of this, but it allows you to pull in that game file and you can actually pull up your tile map on it. You can drop NPCs on the map. And instead of trying to figure out exactly, what's the exact XY coordinates and have to type that into your game editor. So I'm trying to take a lot more of that hard work out even further for the community. And that'll be another free thing I'll be making possible. But as I made this demo, I added more functionality to the NPCs. I added more, things that I have to consider in that game editor. So I want to go back to that and to see when I make changes to my game and the game starter kit, how difficult it is for me to go in and make adjustments to that game editor itself.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things I'm going to be fleshing out. And then after that, I'm going to work on the battle system a little bit further.
Wow, a lot to do, a lot to do, but so much fun to see that this come together. I'm so happy that you agreed to share this work, right? Anything that we could do to bring more game development, light up, independent game development communities, retro game communities. I can see this, eventually making its way out to Portland Retro Game Expo and doing demos at some of these, right? So not to commit you, but we may have to go ahead and get you out there to do these things. But really just awesome early work. It's fantastic that you're building a toolkit that's going to be shared with game developers, and just fantastic job. Great work. Really fantastic. Really fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for taking time with us to show us the demo here. And let's go ahead and, just have a few closing parting words here. So, Matthew, is there anything else that you would like to go ahead and share with our audience about the work that you're doing here? Where can people go again to expect? I know they can go to Frankenware Studios. We're going to make sure that there is a link over to the spritesmind.net forum post that you have, which is already 7 pages deep. So really fantastic. Anything else that you would like to go ahead and share with our audience today?
Yeah, so the game starter kit will be on GitHub. And there's a few tweaks I need to do to it before I'm happy before it's out there in the public. Right now I can pull from it, I can compile it, and it's actually, like I said, using the Shining Force assets in there, which is really neat. But there's a few more things I want to polish up on it. Like for one, whenever you do download it and then compile it, there's still a bunch of warnings in there I want to flesh out, and so you're not actually having to go through like a dumpster fire of errors when or warnings when you're trying to troubleshoot with errors that do naturally come up when you progress. So you'll see that pop up on the Sprite Minds forum because that's an organic thing. Because part of this journey as game developers, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, is that it's being able to give back to the community, and it's not always about the profit. It's not always about just making money for the next game. It's about fanning that flame of that passion. And when you do that, when you fan those flames, right, you're going to create some beautiful work, and people are going to be able to join in on that fun too. And so this is a way for me to give back to others that have given so much to me. And I'm kind of looking forward to the journey.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm in complete alignment with that, right? What's important is make sure we see this stuff out in the world. It can inspire others. It can help others on their journey. And a lot of the skills that people will learn in using toolkits like this will help them even in modern game development. A lot of those, right, those same techniques and the same ways to think about things are still completely relevant in modern game development today.
That's exactly it. And I know we're getting close to time, but it's not about like the language or the languages that you use. Like in 32X, you're going to be doing a lot with C, a lot with assembly, especially against the SH2 processors, which I'm dunce with, but I'm learning. But the fact of the matter is that you're learning how to code, not so much about the language. And you can apply that to any language, anything that new comes out there. You'll have the confidence that you can do it because you've taken the challenge up yourself and like, I can do this, right? Next language comes out, it's like, bring it, I can do this. Yeah. So that's what's important about this development process.
That's awesome. Well, again, Matthew, thank you so much. Yay, everybody. Let's give a big round of applause for Matthew for joining us on the feed today. Really, really fantastic work. I'm super excited to see where you take this. Can't wait for it to hit GitHub. Can't wait to see how we build that dev pipeline on AWS, right? To help make it easier for game developers to start on those journeys. So again, Matthew, thank you so much, buddy, for your time today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Rewind. If you're a game developer from AAA to independent game developer, make sure you head on over to aws.amazon.com/GameTech to find out how Amazon and AWS can help you on your cloud game development journey. And also special thanks to Waterflame for the use of his music here on Rewind and all the other AWS game tech shows that I wind up working on. So check out Waterflame's catalog of incredible music over on YouTube at Waterflame Music. And of course, if you care about the history and the preservation of video game history as much as I do, make sure you head on over to the Video Game History Foundation at gamehistory.org. I'm a founding board member of this 501c3. They're doing incredible work to preserve the history of video games for future generations. And that wraps up this episode of Rewind. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with me. Once again, my name is Chris Melissinos, Principal Evangelist for video games here at AWS. You have an incredible rest of your day, a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week on Rewind.